Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television program. I'm with Chuck Banner, who's a producer and a digital evidence coordinator. So let's talk about what is a digital evidence coordinator.
Somebody who understands files, which is the basis of a lot of TV production. Once you get into post-production, is all about file coordination. I'm sure you're familiar with copies of shows. When you delete a show and you don't copy it, your show's gone. I spent a full year in 2017 and 18, basically switching from, or simultaneously doing documentary work, but then also I help coordinate basically evidence as an assistant coordinator, setting up a system for about the 800 trials that went on after Standing Rock.
Okay, so let's...
And so it was taking the evidence and basically everything that comes in, naming it, filing it, put it where lawyers could access it and things wouldn't disappear, and there was a logic to it to where they could search by date and stuff like that.
Okay, so let's back up a little and explain where you are, what you're documenting, and the importance of what you're doing.
So where I am now is Standing Rock is part of the Ocheti Shakoin, which are the 7 council fires, or the tribes that signed on to the 1851 and 1868 treaties. I went back up to Indian country during Standing Rock, which was in November of 2016. And it's the following year when I started I met someone and ended up doing digital evidence coordination for those trials that followed on that. I started back in 1981 at Yellow Thunder Camp in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Basically went there for an AIM encampment back early on when after a ruling in 1980, when the United States ruled in favor of the Sioux tribe, and basically it was in claims court, so they offered them money. And once again, the tribe said, no thanks for your money, we'll take the land. And so that's when I showed up, was during an occupation of Yellow Thunder Camp right after that 1980 ruling. And so that's, there's a resistance of 200 or 300 years. You have AIM coming in, Wounded Knee happened in the 70s, and then when that ruling happened on the Black Hills, when that ruling happened, that's when AIM went into the Black Hills and set up an encampment. So that's when I first hit there at age 27. So I find myself back at age 60, in my 60s, 65. So when I was 63, back where I kind of started when I was 27.
And you're spending about 2/3 of the month there. You're in residence there. And
I'm spending a lot of time, and it really started with FEMA work. Last March they had a terrible flood, so I work with the Romero Institute out of Santa Cruz and the Lakota People's Law Project, which is part of the Romero Institute. And so I've been at Standing Rock is when I really started first working with the Romero Institute. And so we went up to Standing Rock. Then I had about 6 months where I was here back in Carmel working on the digital evidence, coordinating all the files. Then went back up for Chase's Iron Eyes trial, spent the year in Bismarck, and then I've been, since the election of Julian Baer Runner as president of Oglala, we've been down in Oglala because we have a way to interface with the tribe and work with them. We started with FEMA work. We then, through the floods, it was pretty extensive, doing a lot of database work and helping them coordinate millions of dollars worth of roads repairs. But then, as always, our focus is climate change. The Romero Institute is a 501c3 that can, use a lot of support. RomeroInstitute.org, you can go to it, and they started back in Karen Silkwood days as the Christic Institute. The Iran-Contra affair, Pentagon Papers, the first sanctuary city trials, the Greensboro trial against KKK. They've always been a very progressive constitutional law and kind of human rights group or constitutional rights, and now we switched over to global warming and climate change. And almost all of our work now is focused in California on kind of a Green New Deal, working with the Monterey Bay Community Power was a big thing we did, working against fracking. So we have kind of a green California going 100% sustainable. That's what we're dedicated to, and our other action is out in Lakota country because that's kind of on the front lines of pipeline.
So let's talk about the pipeline. Let's talk about what you're seeing and just kind of a snapshot of a part of America that's most people don't see the struggle.
Well, pipelines suck. Oil out of the ground and then sell it. There's a huge pipeline infrastructure all over this country, and people don't think about it. They just see it as part of business as usual. The problem is the fossil fuel industry has been lying to us for decades about the fact that business as usual is not a problem. The business they do usually destroys lands, it destroys waters, it destroys water tables. You know, it's the same thing as fracking, pipelines, fracking, oil exploration, uranium. It's, you know, the extraction economies have justified their dominance of kind of the political landscape, and that's what's turning around. That's what, you know, that's what Bernie's on every day, is the fact that the fossil fuel industries have to be stopped. And they generally do their dirtiest business in Indian country and in places that affect, you know, even in major cities around LA, and, you know, Bakersfield's just a freaking wasteland, you know, and people endure it and live with it because they think it's a national security thing or some kind of infrastructure. I think people forget that you know, KXL was dead under Obama, and then Trump started back up. It could be dead again. It's not a security issue. It's strictly short-term profits, and it helps drive Wall Street. And so it's this momentum that, you know, people are standing up to, and not fast enough, according to, you know, the global climate change statistics. And so Indian country finds itself with something like 2% of the land base and 20% of the natural resources left in the country, and those things don't have to be mined. And
you've been witnessing, and you've been kind of documenting a David and Goliath struggle up there.
Well, it is, you know, 3 weeks ago I documented, you know, the state of emergency declared on Cheyenne River that's going to have 4 man camps, you know, dotted along the pipeline that basically, you know, surround the Pine Ridge, the Cheyenne River Reservation. It's a you know, in come the man camps to do construction, and it's the largest contribution to missing and murdered Indigenous women. I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of people that are affected as you know, what do you call it when it's collateral damage?
Collateral damage.
And it's huge, you know, and the women and families and moms and dads are just terrified of these camps. It's out of people don't even think about it. People don't realize it. They hear about it, but it doesn't register. But it is just this incredible threat.
Let's talk about living with people who have private security companies up there during that.
Well, they you know, Tiger Swan, which came out of, you know, Blackwater, which came out of the Cheney, you know, the Cheney private militarization of the armed forces, is alive and well and targeting people and eavesdropping and watching them and considering them these, you know, religiously motivated eco-terrorist jihadists, you know, which is just absurd. I mean, I'm an eco-terrorist jihadist, and you by association, I'm afraid, for promoting the work we're doing here. You know, I'm afraid your show is now being watched. But it's a, I don't know, it's just people trying to survive, and we're surviving right in the face of pipelines crossing their treaty territories that are in themselves still disputed, and we still think still think we're on solid ground.
This is the crux of the conflict up there.
Well, land.
Yes.
And the people forget the Lakota didn't lose any wars. The Lakota beat our asses in every conflict that was planned. Other than the fact that then we would sign treaties and cheat and then not give supplies we said we would, and then starve them and you get rid of the buffalo, and basically, we were just dastardly.
So you on a personal level have given up a lot to do this. You live here. You've left the
live
wife.
There more.
Live there more. Have gone on this journey. It's not a comfortable place to be living up there, but it's purposeful.
It's real purposeful, and it's real. I think it's. I don't know. Once you click into global warming and click into really understanding what future generations are and what is important in life, at a certain point, it's just hard. It's hard to forget about it when you click into it, And it's a really unique position I'm in. I mean, the work with the Romero Institute is incredible, and what they do up there in Santa Cruz at 210 High Street, which is part of the, up there where the church is, we're on the upper floor of the church. There's always stuff going on geared towards what California's doing, and the transitioning to 100% renewables, which is really coming on board, and Green New Deal is really important. I think that's something to remember in all of this, the idea that we don't need something absolutely radical, and that everybody's worried about the Bernie revolution. Like, is it too much? Is it a little too? Anyway, nothing short of a total overhaul of what are away from fossil fuels. I mean, that's a huge change, and people shouldn't just be thinking kind of doing it. It really does require the kind of sweeping change that I think, Bernie and Liz, they've both talked about the fact that they would tear KXL out. So if they get elected, I would hope Biden would have the guts to do it, to just stop the fossil fuel industry and say, no, you don't need it. You don't need the profits. Russia doesn't have to go in and take out all the oil. We have to transition. We should save the oil anyway for emergency. Here we are depleting all our oil on short term. All of our military is based on oil. We don't have any conversion to really get away from it. Meanwhile, we're getting rid of all of our resources for short-term gain, and then when we really need it, where are we going to get it? Russia, who's got the biggest supplies of oil in the world? I mean, what is really the plan, and why are we sucking out all these resources, polluting the water, polluting everything, and saying it has to happen? There's just a total disconnect. People still don't get how serious a problem it is. So it's wonderful being out there, because there's a lot of really hard-working, wonderful Native people that I know, and it's very strange coming back here, because part of me really loves being there with friends, and here it's with my wife, and I don't know a lot of people in the community around here, so I've got to say I have more friends in Pine Ridge. I know you, I know King,
yeah.
I know Lauren, and that's about it. So when I go there,
you've really created a life up there.
Well, and with people that are really digging in on something that is about change. It's not window dressing change. It's not kind of, switching over to a Tesla change. It's change that's saying enough already, just enough. Stop with the exploitation. Make the change now, and they have the basis to do it because of their treaties and their alignment with indigenous peoples all over the planet, saying enough. And these, you know, if Trump is a representation, and Zinke and Perry, and if these guys are representation of what the industry is riding on and considers their ambassadors, it's thinner than paper mache. I mean, it's just ridiculous that these are our thought leaders that somehow are able to control our natural resources. And, you know, we're finding stuff with the EPA. You know, we just tested all the waters on all the surface waters, 18 surface water tests all over South Dakota and Pine Ridge. Pine Ridge is over the maximum contamination level for uranium in every stream and river they have, you know, and a lot of it's natural, but also there's mining in the Black Hills, and they're trying to do gold in the Black Hills, and they're putting KXL and DAPL on the east and west. All their water sources are just threatened. And here they are trying to protect them, and meanwhile, all of our water sources are threatened. I mean, if you look at the Central Valley and the levels of contamination, there's a great film called Hot Water, done in 2015, that talks all about the uranium legacy that's happening. And it's just very distressing to how much, even though we're all freaked out about climate change, we all really have so little clue about how bad it is.
And so let's,
It's really upbeat.
on that happy note, let's give the Romero Institute address again.
RomeroInstitute.org, Lakota People's Law Project, Green Power. They 501c3, been around used to be the Christic Institute, is now the Romero Institute. We're supporting, we're in on all fronts.
You're watching YourTown Television. I'm with Chuck Banner. Cool. We've done it. We shouldn't be shaking.